So this afternoon, I'm going to talk about creating custom image maps. And we've done a video on image maps before. It's on our website here under image map. That's another external module. And there's a project XML for that. They recently updated it, so there's some new maps. So if you're interested in that video is on the YouTube site as well. And then the project XML is here. That image map external module. So let me back up and explain what an image map is. An image map is an image that has clickable areas that allow you to set a value for that area. We've all seen these pain scales at doctors' offices and things. So whenever I click this, it gives me the scale that I've selected. This is a single value scale, and the external module, the image map external module, has these built-in image maps that are already set up with the clickable areas and the values. You just create a text field and put in the action tag here. So this one is smile_scale. It also allows you to do multiple selections. So you can see here that all these values that are being clicked are being collected. And this is still in a text box. So it's going to just put them all together with comma separated values, and it's not a checkbox. But one of the nice things is these are ready to go out of the box. They're very easy to use. You just have a text field with an action tag, and you select the map that you want. The downside is that you're limited to what the maps that are available. You have no control over the areas, and you have no control over the values. So if you wanted to name this like shoulder, you couldn't do that. It's hard coded in the module. And another problem with having these image maps this way is that they can't be embedded because they're as part of a text field, and the module for some reason just doesn't respond to the embedding. So if you embedded this, it wouldn't even show up. So what I'm going to talk about today is building your own custom image maps. So here's one that I created. There's two modules in REDCap. One is custom image map with radio buttons. And then there's another one that's just called custom image map, and that has checkboxes. So I created this, and basically this is one image, and then I was able to create the regions that I want for my value. Now with this module for the radio buttons, it doesn't give you the reset link. So you would have to code that separately or add something there to uncheck this once you selected it. That's one of the downsides to the radio button, but it can be coded. I just haven't done it for this. But this would allow you to select, one of these, and I've created a region for each one of these. And that's the radio button. I'm just going to run through these real quick, and then I'll show you how to build it, because I want to give you an idea of what the kind of final result is going to be. So this is the radio buttons. This is a more complicated example. This is with the checkboxes. And so I've created an image that has, in the previous example, the shapes were very simple. It was just a square, whereas this is a custom shape. So I've highlighted the sections of the liver, and in this custom module, the custom image map modules, you get to select the regions and the coloring and the transparency. So this is built using the custom image map external module, and this is with checkboxes. So this allows you to check all of these values. And the way this is built is you have a field that holds the map, and then you have another field that holds the values. And so these would be all checkboxes that would all be selected. And finally, just for some fun, you can have even more complicated shapes. So the three shapes you can build in your image map are rectangles, circles, and polygon. So anything that has a polygon, you will just build however many points you need. So this is an example of the checkboxes. You'll see these checkboxes being checked as I find these things. And then that's just a little fun once you find them all. So this is the power of these custom images, is that you can use any image you want. You could have more complicated shapes and setups, and you can use checkboxes or radio buttons, and then you have complete control over the values and the map areas. So I can name any of these however I want, and I can mark whatever areas I want. And this is embedded. So you can have these as embedded fields. So now that we've done that, let me show you how to make one of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build this, use this image to build a custom map. And the first thing that we need to do is create two fields. So like I said before, we have a custom field, or sorry, we have a descriptive field that takes the image, and then we have a field that takes the values. And I have two sets here. This one is for the checkbox, and this one is for the radio buttons. They're very similar in how you set them up, but there are some slight differences. And like we always do, if you have to go to the modules to enable them, just click on external modules. And the one you want to look for here, so you click enable a module, and in the search area, if you want the one with checkboxes, you would get custom image map. And if you want radio buttons, you would do custom image map with radio buttons. And the documentation here is really nice. At first glance, it might look like they're both the same. The top portion is the same, but when it comes down here to building the radio buttons or the checkboxes, that's when they differ. And down here, the action tag will differ as well. This one's custom image map, and this one is custom image map radio. And we'll get to that. So the first thing we need to do is create an image. And it has to be an image that is hosted somewhere. It can't be a local image. So the first thing we have to do is, I use Imager all the time to post images because it's just a way to generate a link, and they don't delete things. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this basic shapes image to there. And I need to have the image link. This is the post link. So this will bring up this page for Imager, but I want this image link. So I would right click and copy image address. And if you open up the image in a new tab, you'll see that it has, it just shows the image. That's how you know you're on that link. And it'll also start with i.imager. So now I have that link copied, this here. And the tool that they recommend in the directions here is a really good tool. It's, let me see, it's this imagemap.net. So it allows you to create an image map. And you can either select an image from your PC, but if you do that, you will have to update the source of your image. You still have to host it. I would recommend doing it this way, going to Imager first and getting your image link and then loading it from the website. So we're going to copy that image link here. And another important thing is you want to make sure that your image is the size that you want it. And you're not changing the size once you put it in REDCap, because these maps, these selectable areas work on coordinates and they're pixel coordinates. So if you create these areas based on certain pixels and then you shrink the, you resize the image, those coordinates are going to be off now. So, you know, what I would recommend is going into your project and adding your image, opening it up in a record to see how it fits. And if you need to resize it, then do all that before you add it to Imager and before you create the map. So we're going to create three selectable areas. And the first one here is rectangle. So I'm just going to add both of these areas here. Now, rectangle, what it does is it gives you 2 points, and then it just gives you a height and a width. So if I click here and here, it's going to give me the shape. And then what I can do, what's nice about this is I can just drag this over here and drag this over here, and I've created the area. Now, if I click in the middle of this, it allows me to move the shape around. So if I have to nudge it over, if you don't get it quite right, you can do that by moving it over. So that's for rectangles. It gives you those 2 points. And I'll show you the coordinates whenever we copy this code over. So it's 2 points and a height and a width. The next one we're going to make, and to make sure you're not messing with your previous one, you always want to make sure that whatever you're working in is the one that has the selected radio button. So now we're going to do a circle. And this one gives you two coordinates as well. One is the center of the circle, and the other one is the radius. So what you do is you just try to click as best you can in the center, and then off to the side here. And you can see I was off. So now I just grab it and kind of move it around, and then get it kind of, to that shape. And that should be good enough right there. So you can tinker with this all you want, but really you just have those 2 coordinates and that one's all set up. The more complicated ones are the polygons, and that little find a picture hidden object page was a little more complicated because you have to click, you have to make more complex shapes. But it's really nice because you don't have to get it on the first try. So instead of trying to be very meticulous and getting right in here, trying to hit all the points, you could just click, you're going to need 10. And then once you have those, you can move them in. And if you need to, you can also bump up the zoom on your browser. And it doesn't have to be precise. You're really just providing a clickable area because you don't want somebody to go in. Like if they grab this bottom part of the star, you want it to highlight. You don't want them to miss that. But if it's kind of, close enough, like that. So now we have 3 images, or we have 3 selectable areas. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a value. So this will be square, this will be circle, and star. And these we would leave alone. You don't have to mess with anything for the link or the target, because when we copy that HTML out, we're going to get rid of those images. So now that we have the 3 areas, I'm going to select all this, and I'm going to open up my Visual Studio Code. And you can see here that for the square, we have the coordinates. This is basically the top corner, X and Y, and the bottom corner, X and Y. I could have sworn it had the height and width, but I think that's for the SVG image. And then the circle, once again, it only has the point for the center, and then the radius for the circle. And then for the star, there's 10 pairs, and each one has an XY coordinate for each point. Now, this is what we need. This is what we need to start with. And we have to get rid of these hrefs. We don't really have to get rid of them if they're blank, but they recommend getting rid of them so that it doesn't redirect your user anywhere else. And the next thing we need to do is add an ID for this image, and we need to add an ID for this map. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add ID equals shapes image. And then here I'm going to have ID equals shapes map. And basically what ties these two together is the name here of this map and this use map image map. And those are generated automatically in the map. And that basically you're generating these map areas and then you're linking them to this image. It overlays them basically. This we have to add for the modules because we have to tell what image we're using and what map we're using. And then the next thing we need to do is add a data key. So we have the image, we have the map. We need to tell it when I click on this square, what checkbox do I want it to fill out? And the way to do that is with a data key value. And what I like to do, since we're going to replace this target anyway, is I like to replace it with data key. So I'm not having to type them in again. And then if we go back to our project here, you'll see that the values are 1, 2, and 3 for square, circle, and star. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 1, 2, and 3 here. Nope. I can type. And that's really all we need. Now, I'm going to put this in the project here. And then we have to update the action tag down here. So let me paste this here. We can get rid of this. And the next thing we need to do is now we need to add the values for this action tag. And that will be here. So if you just want to copy this action tag, this whole thing, and then it tells you what each one of these is within this register image map. So we have an image ID, which is the ID of the image that we created. We have the map ID, which is the ID of the map. We have the original checkbox name, which is the name of the field where the checkboxes are going to be. We have the color, which is the color of the highlighted areas. And then we have the code attribute, which is the data key value. Because you can name it whatever you want. You can give it whatever attribute name you want. You just have to tell it what attribute you're using. So we're using the data key. So we're going to go back here to this. And we had our image ID was shapes image. Our map ID was shapes map. The original checkbox, let me just copy this. So let me just copy this and save it so that way I can grab that field value. So this is shapes check. So we'll put that in. The other thing is, even though these don't have quotes on them, you have to put quotes around. Single quotes or double quotes, it doesn't matter. And that was shapes check. Now the color is going to be an RGB A value. So RGBA, red, green, blue, and A is the alpha channel. So that's the level of transparency that you want. If you don't have transparency, that whole region is just going to be a solid color. But if you want to show the image underneath, then you need to have some transparency. So if I want yellow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this. This is the RGB value. And I'm going to put that in here. Now, the transparency value goes from 0 to 1. So if you wanted it to be 25% opaque, which means 75% transparent, then you would do like 0.25, or sorry, 0.25. So if you had a value of 1, that's completely opaque. And if you had a value of 0, that's completely clear. So think of it that way as a scale. So we're just going to have 25% opaqueness and 75% transparency on here. And the code attribute, like we said, and you got to put the quotes here. And then the attribute is data key. I can spell key right. There we go. And I'm just going to copy this because we're going to use these same values for the radio buttons. And I'll show you how this one works. Make sure we got it right. So not sure why that's black, but it's working. So what we need to do is fix the color. And it could be because I didn't put, it's got to be RGBA. And then there. And that's a little too light. You can barely see it. So I'm going to go back and change it. We'll do 75% opaque. There we go. So you can see now that if I select each one of these, they highlight and it persists, and then the checkbox is selected for each one of these. And I can uncheck these. Now, if you do want to use the radio buttons and you don't want to have to code, because ideally what you would do is you would have this, you would create this image map and then you would hide these checkbox fields because you really want, once you verify that these values are being selected, you don't need to show these down here because like you just saw, I could uncheck these. So even though these are selected up here, I could still mess with the checkbox. You could set it as read only, but you probably want to just have it hidden. But if you're going to use the radio buttons, you might want to keep it as read only and then have the reset here or something. So I'll show you how to do the radio buttons now. It's the same. And let me just put this in a notepad with the HTML that we had. Oh, here's another thing that I need to mention too. You can see here that there's spaces within my code. And if we go to the image, everything looks fine on the image. So whenever we paste the HTML, if we look at the record here though, you should see sometimes what it'll do is it'll add breakpoints. And it doesn't look like it added them here, but sometimes it'll add every break in a line, it will add the little breakpoint like this or like this. And then what that does is it doesn't, because this is within an image and a map, what it does is it would just grab all those breakpoints and add them down at the bottom of your field. So they would just show up down here. So if you have a lot of space popping up down here under your field, what you do is you have to get rid of the breakpoints. And an easy way to do that is using Minify. So there's another website. You can just, if you look up Minify HTML, there's plenty of sites online. But basically what it does is it allows you to take out all the white space. And you can see here, it automatically just got rid of all the white space. If I click Minify, it'll do the same thing. And if I put it back in, you'll see a difference here. So I'll just paste it down here. So you can see now it's all on one continuous string as opposed to breaking it out like this. And so if you find that your image is doing that, then that's what you need to do. And it tells you that in here. It says that remove new lines from HTML code. They are replaced with break elements and ruin your syntax. So all of the things that I'm talking about here can be found in this documentation. It's actually quite detailed for as short as it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this HTML again. We'll save that. We're going to save this. Got to get out of there and then save it. So I'm just going to pop this into the radio button version, and we do rich text editor and just do it that way. Now in here, this was for something else. So we're just going to copy. I'm just going to put it down here, but because it's identical to the image map, but the only thing we need to change here is image map radio. So I'm just going to copy this portion of the code and then replace that. But it's exactly the same. You know, there's a map, and actually it looks like this whole code, this whole chunk here is different. So I'll bring that. There we go. So it's the same thing. It's just the map, the image, the map, the field, the color you want, and the data key. And if you don't want yellow, you can go to the HTML color codes and select whatever you want. Just remind yourself that this is going to be the pure color. So if you want red, that's going to be the pure color red. And if you want transparency, but then you have to add the transparency afterwards. So if you go to something too light like this, and then you have something, you pick that color and then you add transparency, it's going to be very, very faint. So you probably want to use a bold color, something that's bright. It depends on what your picture is. So we're going to go back here. We're just going to use the yellow, but we're going to bump it up to 75 and we'll hit save. And then we'll refresh this. So now we have this one working with the checkboxes, which I don't know why it's not working with the checkboxes now. And this one should work with the star, but for some reason that's not working with the star. So I'm not sure what broke on that. Exactly. It might have been with the minify code here. So let me just grab that again. Oh, look, it put the values back somehow. Oh, you know what this is? This is a this one should be shapes radio. That's why that one was shapes check. Shapes radio and shapes check radio. So this one should be shapes radio image. And this one should be shapes radio. Okay. Sorry. So this is shapes image. That's the image. This is the image ID. This is the maps ID. And this is shapes radio. And I don't know. It's you can see it's selecting them down here. It might be strange. I'm not sure why it's running, because if these aren't letting me select the radio buttons, but if I select the checkbox up here, it's giving me, it's doing the radio buttons down here, and I'll have to figure that out. But it's the same format, even though I can't get the radio button working, we're kind of running out of time. It's the same format as doing the radio buttons. You just set a radio button field and then you use the action tag here and then just fill in the values that they give you. This one has the dummy values that you can replace and has the parameters here without the quotes. So you just have to add the quotes. So real quick, does anybody have any questions about that?
I just want to add a comment about the minify. If you know what you're looking for, you could actually do your own editing inside the HTML, inside the written text editor. So you don't have to go find this tool. If you know that you're looking for the BR with the slash or just the BR, you can go in and actually delete those things yourself.
Yeah, that's true. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll grab it, I'll copy and paste this into a text box, and then I do, find and replace sometimes. What's weird is it didn't add the break tags on this image, but when I did it for the liver image, it did, and I had to pull a bunch of those off. So, any other questions or comments? I know it's a lot. And next week I'll probably do there's an SVG image map that instead of using regular images, it allows you to use SVG images. And that one's a bit more complex. So we can revisit this next week too if we get a chance.